begins with the shaping of your identity by aligning your associations, habits, affirmations, and faith with the future you're called to live. And he lives that out daily in both business and in life. He's a former Army Special Operations veteran, Deloitte consultant. He's now top ranked financial professional. He's a dynamic team builder, I can attest to that, and sought after keynote speaker. As a founder of Strategic Ascent, he's coached hundreds of leaders to shift their mindset, elevate their financial strategy, and build lives of lasting impact. He doesn't just deliver, everyone. He creates experiences that spark alignment, activate purpose, drawing from faith, personal growth, and tactical execution. If you're ready to stop drifting, you want to take control of your future and build a legacy that matters this moment, please help me welcome Nathan Wheeler.
You know, while I go over some of the things that I want to go over today, I want to ask a question. You know, what do you do when everything that you thought defined you no longer applies? You know, I didn't realize it at the time, but the most pivotal moment in my life, it didn't happen in childhood, even with all the adversity that we faced there. It didn't happen in the military. It didn't happen on the battlefield. It happened during my transition out of the military. You know, after 11 years in the Army, serving with the 173rd Airborne Brigade, 10th Special Forces Group, you know, I had the medals, I had the mission success, the badges, the tabs. I had a resume that most people would respect. But none of that mattered when I found myself, you know, sitting in silence, realizing that everything that I had built throughout my military career, it didn't seem to count for anything outside of it. It felt fake, irrelevant. It was gone. And so I had to ask myself a terrifying question. Who am I now? Because that's the question that every high achiever eventually faces. When the titles fade, when the momentum slows, when you realize that success and fulfillment are not the same thing. Who am I now? Who was I meant to be? You know, that moment of stillness and discomfort, it wasn't the end. Now, for too many of my brothers and sisters, it is. But for me, it became the beginning of a shift that changed everything. And here's the truth. You know, most people, they don't burn out from exhaustion. They burn out from misalignment. We chase performance. We chase status. We chase approval. But in the process, we drift away from who we really are. So when the life you're living no longer matches the identity you were designed to carry, that's a drift. And it doesn't matter how good you look on paper. If you're drifting, you feel it because you're out of alignment with who you want to be, who you were made to be, or who you're becoming. And so I started asking a better question. What would it take to live in alignment with who I was created to be? And that led me to what I call the 4 pillars of identity. And they didn't just change my life, they rebuilt it. And so pillar 1 is your associations. Who you spend the most time with shapes who you believe you are and what you believe about yourself. And after the Army, what I missed the most, it wasn't the structure. I didn't like waking up at 5 a.m., being told what to do, when to eat, where to go, how to operate every moment of my life and day. What I missed, it was the brotherhood. It was that shared mission, that friction that forges excellence. Because success is a team sport. And when you have a group of people that are moving in the same direction, all towards the same goal, that's power. And letting go of that was hard. But when I surrounded myself with faith-driven leaders, entrepreneurs, and world changers, everything shifted. I didn't just see what was possible, I believed that I could do it. And if you want to change your life, change your circle. Proximity is power. Pillar 2 is habits. What you do consistently becomes who you are. See, I didn't always feel like waking up early. I didn't feel like doing all the things that I had to do to get to where I wanted to be. I didn't feel like showing up when nobody was watching, but I did it anyway. Because identity isn't built on feelings, it's built on patterns. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your discipline. And discipline, it doesn't restrict your freedom, it creates it. Pillar 3 is affirmations. The most powerful story is the one that you tell yourself. You know, what you say to you about you shapes who you believe you are. You know, at one point, I realized I was still carrying old labels, things people said about me, or worse, things that I believed about myself in my lowest moments. But I made a decision. I started speaking life. I started declaring the truth about who I was becoming. Let me give you an example. You know, one of my clients, combat veteran just like me, he came to me thinking it was too late for him to build a legacy. He had $157,000 in consumer debt. He wasn't on track for the retirement that he and his wife wanted. And when we sat down, we didn't just build him a financial strategy. We rewrote his story. We rewrote the story that he was telling him about him and what he could do. We ran an analysis. We identified which assets he could access, how and why, based on the Internal Revenue Code. And today he's debt-free. And he's on track to retire with a healthy 6-figure tax-free retirement supplement. And now he's mentoring younger service members and entrepreneurs how to do the same thing. How to change the story that they're telling themselves about where they want to be and what they can accomplish in any regard. But I want you to hear me clearly on this. That shift, it didn't start with money. It started with identity. Now, pillar 4 is faith. And for me, this is the most important one. Because your true identity, it doesn't come from performance. It comes from your creator. You know, the world told me that I had to earn my worth, but my faith reminded me that I was designed for purpose, on purpose. I believe in God, and God says we're kings and queens. We're priests and priestesses. We are heirs to the throne. And when you start living with that truth in your bones, it changes how you show up. You know, I stopped asking, what am I qualified for? And I started asking, what was I called to build? And today, I run a financial firm that spans North America, filled with ethically driven professionals who are changing the way that people build and protect wealth. We help families, entrepreneurs, business owners, and investors take back control of their money, their mission, and their future. But we don't start with the numbers. We start with alignment. Because if you're misaligned, no amount of strategy will save you. But I got to keep it real. Alignment doesn't happen once and stay forever. That drift is sneaky. It shows up when you're tired, distracted, or overwhelmed. So I built something simple, something that I use personally, and I teach my clients and my team, and I call it the anti-drift formula. There are 5 powerful tools that bring you back into alignment fast. Because some people drift for years, some people drift for months, some people drift for days. The goal, though, is to get that down to as little time as possible. You want to get that drift down to minutes. And so here's what I do. I start with a prayer. I connect with God. I realign my spirit with my purpose. I'll journal. I'll write. I get clear on my thoughts and intentions. I look back to the things that I've done, the successes that I've had, and I celebrate my milestones to remind me of how awesome I am. I exercise. I move my body because motion, it clears emotion. And I'll call a friend. I'll get perspective. I'll let somebody speak truth back into me and hold me accountable. And then 5, I'll meditate or take a nap. I'll create stillness. I'll reset my nervous system. Now look, you don't have to do all 5, but you got to start with one. And if one doesn't work, you go to the next one. And when you stack them, you don't just bounce back, you rise higher. And so I want to ask you, are you living from your crafted identity or your called identity? Are your associations aligned? Are your habits consistent? Are your affirmations breathing life into you? Is your faith unshakable? If not, don't panic. Just pivot and realign. Audit your circle. Audit your inputs, audit your language, return to your foundation. Because the world, it doesn't need another burnt out high achiever. It needs you, fully aligned and fully alive. See, years ago, when I was sitting in that moment of confusion, trying to figure out who I really was, that moment wasn't my breaking point. It was my breakthrough. And it wasn't because I found a new career path or made more money. It's because I finally stepped into the man that I was created to become. Now I help others do the same through financial strategy, leadership development, and identity alignment. And I'm going to leave you with this. The world is yours. So let's go get it.